This call is being recorded.
Welcome to A Cup with Win. This is my maiden episode out of Phoenix, Arizona. And you guys, I am truly blessed to be here. Today I have Tyla with me. I'm going to let Miss Tyla take it away and start sharing her story. And then we'll just have a natural conversation like we always do. And I will let Miss Tyla take it away.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me, Win. I'm really excited to be here. A little background on me, I guess, is that I am currently a sustainability advocate, speaker, and educator, and I am a host of a podcast called the Unlock Earth podcast, which is all about kind of sharing awesome people in the sustainability space and the personal development space and how people can really live their best lives while reducing the impact on the planet. So this is something I didn't, I guess, intend to start doing. It was definitely something that happened over time. And I mean, I don't think I would be here today if COVID hadn't happened. And I got made redundant from my job in August that I'd had for 4 years throughout uni. So I just graduated uni. I got made redundant in the middle of a pandemic. At that time, Melbourne, where I live, was in a stage 4 lockdown. So we couldn't go more than 5 kilometers from our house. I don't know what that is in miles for the American listeners, but not far from your house at all. And so really during that time, and I'd started the podcast just before this, but that opportunity really gave me a chance to, and I see it as an opportunity. I feel like most people would be really upset about getting made redundant. And while it was a tough time, it really gave me the opportunity to do the things that I'd maybe not had the courage to do and take the step. And I don't think if that had happened, I wouldn't have kind of done all the things I do today. So, for example, since then I've launched a low waste living course. I've done a few more speaking engagements, which is something I absolutely love doing. And I'm just really working on making sustainability accessible to people and showing everyone that you can live a little bit more sustainably in your life without changing absolutely everything. Because I think most people want to make some sort of a difference in their life, but it's quite a difficult thing for a lot of people to understand where to even start with that. So that's sort of the journey that I've been on over the past sort of 12 to 18 months and really just building it up from there. But it was definitely a situation where it could have been really bad, but I think it gave me the exact push I needed to just do what I wanted to do and follow my dreams. And that's what brings us here to talking today.
Positive attitude there, Tyla. And for those of you who just thought Tyla spoke French when she says made we made terminated, she means got laid off, aka
Hmm.
got laid off. So laid off, and your story is similar to mine. When I got laid off, I got terminated from my job, and I'm like, okay, in the beginning of a pandemic, you got terminated for a job, and why don't you seize the opportunity to go do freelance journalism full time? And then just make this podcast your full-time job, and then you can move anywhere you want, which I have been blessed enough to be given the opportunity to move to Arizona. And I packed up my car, which is my minivan. I had a duffel bag. I had a assistant that I barely knew, and we took off from Aspen, Colorado at 5 a.m. on March 19th, and I've been parked in Arizona, North Phoenix slash Scottsdale ever since. And so being a full-time podcaster and full-time entrepreneur, you get to live the best life.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And that was for me. So I was just a little bit more background. I was actually overseas when I guess COVID got really bad, and which was kind of a good thing because it meant I got to do a lovely trip before we couldn't travel at all. But it was while I was traveling that I had this kind of, we'll call it an epiphany. It was a bit, that might be a bit woo woo for some people, but it was very much a moment of like, oh my gosh, I need to travel more. I need to experience the world more. And so you're absolutely right. It, being able to work for myself, being able to freelance, doing that sort of thing, it just gives you so much more flexibility. Like I've just spent the last 3 weeks with some family interstate in Australia because it's safe to travel here. And it's just been incredible because I've been able to work and do that. I didn't have to take time off work. I didn't have to plan everything. Like, yes, there was accommodations made to make sure that I could work remotely, but not nearly what it would have been if I was working in a full-time job. So it
No,
definitely allows you flexibility. I completely agree with that. And it's awesome to hear that you've done a similar thing.
and it's I've done a similar thing and I love it. And I said to a person today as we're recording this on April 20th, I said, I will just be doing podcast work, but if you need me, I will drop everything for you. And they're like, I don't care as long as you're available. If I needed you, I don't care. And so it's it's quite cool to be working remotely in across the pond, but it's quite cool to be working remotely. And a lot of these big companies now, like Twitter and Google, are saying you guys can work from home.
Absolutely. And it is exciting. And I think it's the move we need to make. And who knows, since we are both able to have that freedom, then hopefully soon, borders permitting, I can come and visit you over there. Did you say
Yeah,
you're in Phoenix now?
I'm in Phoenix now. I transplanted myself with help. Uh,
Yeah, that's awesome.
to Phoenix, Arizona. And so, okay, now I have a question for you that wasn't on the questions list, but we'll get back to the questions list in a minute. And there's a backstory to this question. Okay, in the Venice Canal, they say there's now dolphins in the Venice Canal. This was at the beginning of COVID. So, how do you think, as a sustainability expert, we should keep the planet calm? Because, quite frankly, COVID, as a heck of a year that 2021 was, COVID was a blessing in disguise to calm the planet down.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And to be quite honest, it's one of those things where it was an opportunity that we probably haven't utilized. And it was probably something that I think a lot of governments should have taken action on well before we're at the point where people are getting vaccinated and the country's kind of open and the world's kind of starting to open up again. I believe that it definitely showed people that the human impact of climate change. And I think that's something a lot of people kind of like to argue about of what the human impact of climate change is. And I think seeing that with us not manufacturing as much, not traveling as much, all of those sorts of things led to a significant decrease in a lot of the issues that we were seeing. So I think there were some incredible images like from the Taj Mahal, as you said, the dolphins in Italy. I actually hadn't heard that one, so that's awesome. Quite honestly, I think that there's got to be huge systematic change if we're going to with any issue. Like if we're looking broader than sustainability, I think with any issue, there's got to be some sort of broader change because the way our society is running is just completely unsustainable.
Yeah,
And so I
that's
think
right.
that, yeah, and I know a lot of what you advocate for is um, around rights for people with disabilities and stuff like that. And I think that same with that, like there just is so much change that needs to happen that it feels like it's really overwhelming for people. And so I think that one, like a very easy thing that people can do is switch their bank account to an account that doesn't support fossil fuels. So banks are some of the biggest investors in the world that go into fossil fuels. So if these fossil fuel companies keep getting funding, then of course they're going to keep operating. So I think it's one of those things where I think we did have such a great opportunity to see what the world could be like with a reduced impact. I think we didn't act when we should have acted. And I'm talking not we as individuals, but as a society as a whole, government, that sort of thing, companies. But beyond that, I think we do still all have an individual part to play, and stuff like who you vote for in your government. If you're living in a country that's a democracy, who you're voting for is such a huge thing. Who you're supporting in even like your local council elections, and
Yeah,
making it really clear what you want to support, because I think a lot of people think, oh, they'll just know that I care about this, but they don't. And it might be annoying to send a couple of emails to a few of your representatives, but it does make a big impact down the line. So unfortunately, I do think we maybe are past the opportunity that we had for this big change, like you mentioned. And I wish there was a huge change from that. But I'm just really hoping that people are a lot more conscious going back into what's going to be our new normal to, yeah, really think about their individual impact, but also what they can do on a broader scale. And hopefully we'll start seeing more action from big players like government and large corporations.
Exactly. No, when I was filling out something the other day, they said, "Well, do you want this application?" When they asked me, "Do you want to register to vote?" And to swing it back to disabled rights, my senator down in Arizona, Mark Kelly, who was a astronaut for NASA at one point, his wife got fatally shot. Thank you very much. And did a TBI, Gabrielle, and now has a traumatic brain injury, Gabrielle Giffords. And no wonder why I was so gun ho to sign up to vote, you guys, because I don't the dumb that I was, it didn't click until someone said, when you are living in a progressive state for people with disabilities, you know that your senator's wife now has a traumatic brain injury because she was out campaigning for herself. And because of her, she was out campaigning for herself and was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And now her husband goes not only to bat for her, but for the rest of us. So I agree with you. It doesn't take the big plan of throwing out the garbage in the recycling. It takes the small little check mark of picking who you want to vote for.
Absolutely. And that's such an incredible story. I feel like I don't hear a lot about sort of American politics that isn't sort of your big presidential
Yeah.
election sort of thing. So it's interesting to hear that story.
You know, no, someone mentioned it to me, and I'm like, no wonder why I was so gonna to vote. And when as time goes on, I will just get registered to vote down in Arizona. So it doesn't take a big, as we're recording this, and you guys can see this because it's audio, but I noticed there is plants behind Tyla, and I love it. And right now, my house is a little bit of a mess, you guys. So I'm trying to get more plants in here because I love plants. Plants make me happy, and so seeing the plants and being outside, it makes me happy. And that's one of the reasons why I moved out of the cold and the snow and ugh, not enough plants and not enough sunlight. But and to swing it back to sustainability, how do you feel, Missy, about solar energy?
So this is really interesting. And I by no means think that I am a sustainability expert. Most of what I do is about kind of like I have a series that I do on TikTok or Instagram about like easy eco hacks.
Yeah,
So I think on a broader level, I think renewable energy is the way that the world is going. Regardless of your opinions on it, we are running off of finite resources, which will run out. And so, one, it's going to get a hell of a lot more expensive to access fossil fuels and use those in whatever you're using them for. So I think that there is going to have to be a move to greener energy, and there is. And the reality for me is that I think in Australia there's starting to be some investment in renewable energy. We obviously get a lot of sun, and it's going to depend on whereabouts you live and stuff like that. So I think that it's definitely something that we're trying to make a move to here. And look, I think it's the way of the future. And the reality is that it's going to depend on what country you live, whether you own your home, whether you don't own your home, whatever it is going to have an impact on what type of renewable energy is the most suitable for you or for your country, whether you're kind of getting your own renewable energy. So a lot of houses here have solar panels. I don't know about the rest of the world, but a lot of houses here have solar panels. But I know there are other countries, like I visited the Netherlands not long before COVID hit, and they have a ton of windmills, which are wind turbines, which work really well for them. because they've got such a flat land, they've got less space, so they can just shoot them up really high in between their highways and stuff like that. So that works for them. So I think renewable energy is definitely going to be the way of the future. I think it's not a perfect system right now, and it's probably never going to be what you call a perfect system. But if we don't take the time now to re-educate people who are working in industries like fossil fuels that are going to be made redundant in the next couple of years, like those industries within the next like 50 years are going to severely have job losses because you don't have enough resources. And so I think and I don't know exactly about what other countries are doing or really what Australia is doing, because I know it's not as much as I would like to see, but I think a big step that people can take or that governments can take is starting to educate or re-educate, retrain the people who are currently working in industries like ones that are working with fossil fuels into greener energies, just because that's such an easy way for them to make sure that there's job prospects in the future, since we know that's the way most energy is moving. And it also means then we've got more investment and more resources into those renewable energy sources. So back to your original question, I am a huge fan of solar panels. As I said, there's nothing that's a perfect system and there's nothing that's ever going to be completely sustainable. At this point, we're looking to significantly lessen our impact, and that's a great way to do it.
And why can't we teach the disabled how to put solar panels together or do something eco-friendly? Why do we have to just say what? And you get me on the soapbox here, but why do we have to sit the disabled at a desk and have them file paperwork all day? Just throwing that out there, and I'll get off my medium soapbox here. But that is something for those of you that don't know. I have a family member that started the first renewable energy conference based out of Aspen, Colorado. It's called All Day. If you Google it, you'll see it. You'll see it. That is my family member. And so eco-friendly hacks are something that I want to do for the rest of my life now that I'm down in a state that is more conducive than the cold and the snow. But Tyla, what is one eco-friendly hack that you can give my audience that you can think of about the off the top of your head?
Oh, I don't know if I can pick one. And just to go back to what you were saying before, I think you're absolutely right. I think it comes down to an opportunity point of view. And I think there is absolutely no reason that you couldn't be training people with disabilities to do that as well. So I completely agree. But to answer your question, just one. I think one of the easiest things people can do, and this is something that I recently posted about on Instagram, and so many people were like, oh my God, I didn't know that, which surprised me, is that just turning your appliances off at the switch. So what that means in different countries means if you have like a literal switch like we do here, you switch it off. If you don't, that means just pulling it out from the wall. And I read somewhere, and I don't quote me on this because I can't remember the source of it, but it's something like 10% of household energy use is from like dormant appliances, so appliances that aren't being currently used. So if you think about things like if you have a microwave or a television that you're not using all the time, stuff like that, that you leave plugged in can be actually using a little bit of electricity. So switch them off, pull them out at the plug, whatever, depending on where you live in the world, is such an easy thing you can do to really cut down on it. One, it saves you money because it'll cut down your energy costs, and it might be really nominal amounts. But if you think about those nominal amounts over like an 80-year life, that's a huge amount of one, money for you, but two, environmental impact that's significantly decreased.
Well, it's so funny you say that because I don't use a microwave. One, I can't due to the um, dexterity in my hand that I can't grab something that is mightily hot. The second
Mm.
reason is because of the EMFs that come off the microwave, and people are so shocked when I said I don't use a microwave. People have to use one for me, and this is why. And they're like, "Oh, you really don't use microwave?" And then when my assistant the other day goes, "What's this coffee maker doing on your kitchen?" I said, "I don't know. I don't drink it." She goes, "Let me unplug it and put it underneath the sink." And I'm like, "Well, that's a smart move." And I'm trying in Arizona. I'm trying to be more eco-friendly, and I may just I'm getting number one. I'm getting the TV out of here. I'm get either mounting the TV. I'm pulling the TV out of my bedroom so we can unplug that TV, and then I'm mounting the TV um, in my living room. So, and I may even have a switch that I have access to get to turn the TV off, because you're right, all these energy bills are going up and up and up, because even if we turn the blender on, let's say for 20 minutes, the the blender is plugged in. So you're right in saying that the blender may be off, but it's certainly pulling from somewhere.
Well, I was just going to say quickly, don't want to interrupt you at all, but another easy way to make that even easier for people and to make it more practical for people who maybe, as you said, like hand dexterity wise is, and I'm not sure if this will apply for everyone, but it might make it easier for some people, is if you use a power board in a place where you've got lots of plugs. So for example, if you've got a home office and you plug in your monitor and your computer or your laptop or whatever it is, you probably have a couple of different plugs in that area. So using a power board means you only have to switch off or pull out one plug versus like 5. So that's another easy way that people who, one, are very likely to forget, which I am, can quickly kind of do them all at once. Or an alternative is you can get a smart power board. Now, these sound expensive, but they're not. They're like a little bit more expensive than your regular ones. But what they do is they can tell when one of your devices isn't on. So, say you've got your laptop plugged in, but your monitor's on and you're not using it, it can tell that it's not being used and it's not on. So, it'll actually cut the power to it, which is another way that if you, like I said, if you aren't able to go and unplug all of those things at once, it's an easier way to do it as well. So those are just a couple more tips that might help people who are wanting to
That's
do that
awesome.
switching off as
That's
well.
awesome. I might have to write this down a smart power board myself, because I'm looking at a desk right now which has a laptop plugged into it, a cell phone plugged into it, and so we might I might have to invest in this smart power board, because I want to save a little bit of energy in Arizona. And just I typically don't have the AC on in my house unless unless I really really need it, because um, I'm coming to realize that just like heat in Colorado is a valuable resource, and if we don't need heat, we turn it off, and because it makes the energy bill go up like astronomically. I'm coming to realize in Arizona, it's the AC that makes the energy bill go up astronomically. So I would rather have the door open all the time and deal with that, deal with background noise from a major highway than deal with the AC.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, right? Is no matter wherever you live, whatever your living situation looks like is going to impact how, like the impact that you're going to have. So like you said, aircon versus heating, both of them are very high energy, or use a lot of energy. And in my household, even growing up, it was like we never had an air conditioner, and we had a heater that was only allowed to be used in very special circumstances. So it's definitely one of those things where it is going to so much depend on whereabouts you live, who you live with, what the place you live with is like, the place you live in is like, sorry, and that all is going to have an impact. So I think everyone, don't listen to this and be like, I have to change everything now. That's absolutely the opposite of what I try to advocate for. It's the small changes that we can all make. But I love that you touched on that aircon as well.
It's the small successes that count. If you can do just a little bit, if you can not, if you can use a reusable water bottle, that can help save the planet. I now have a hydro flask. If you can use a turn off your power wheelchair when you're not using it. That can help the carbon footprint. I'm trying, you guys. I'm not so good at it. It beeps at me when it wants to be turned off, but I'm trying to be a good conscious power user of a power tool. And so we're not talking about go get solar powers and go get a Tesla and go get everything else. We're just talking about the little small changes.
Absolutely. I completely agree.
Yeah. So what has the pandemic taught you?
Oh my gosh. I don't know if I can so many things, like so many things I just never would have expected. And as I said earlier, if the year hadn't unfolded as it did, I wouldn't be the person that I am today, which I think is something where like any adversity for anyone in their life, I think as much as you want to be like, oh, I wish something didn't happen, you wouldn't be the person you are today if that didn't happen. I think for me, a lot of it, at least the second half of the year, was a lot about just prioritizing my mental health. And I think that that's something that I already knew was important, but just showed me more than ever that if you don't have your mental health, then you kind of don't have anything. And it's one of those things that your mind just impacts so much of your life and your lifestyle. And even if you have these huge goals of achieving incredible things and changing the planet or whatever your kind of direction that you want to go in is, if you're not prioritizing your mental health and if you're not kind of looking at that as something that is more important than pretty much everything else in your life, then you're never going to be in a good enough position to fulfill those types of things for yourself. And so I kind of see it as, and it's the same analogy of like, if you're in a plane accident, God forbid, and like the masks come down, you put your mask on yourself first. And that's an analogy that I feel like is used so often, but it's something that's so true. Because if you're not looking after your mental health first, then there's no chance that you're going to be able to support the other people in your life. You're going to be able to do whatever you want to do that's going to change the planet or just get that new promotion, like whatever it is, at whatever level you're looking at it at. I think that the biggest learning I've taken from 2020 and the pandemic was just prioritizing your mental health. And the other thing was the importance of travel, which I just didn't realize. And that might sound like a huge contradiction to me talking about sustainability, but a lot of what I'm looking into now is about doing some sustainable slow travel post pandemic. And that means kind of spending a little bit more time in certain places rather than spending a week here, a week there, a week there, a week there, spending time getting to know the place, getting comfortable there, and then moving on to somewhere else. So yeah, I mean, there's been a ton of lessons, but for me, the mental health one was a big thing. And as a part of that, that involved me getting diagnosed with ADHD, which was one of the most, I don't know if validating is the right word, but that's kind of what it felt like, a very validating experience for someone who's always felt like my brain worked a little bit differently or people just didn't quite understand where I was coming from for so many things. And so having the time to really prioritize my mental health, find out that that was something that I had never been diagnosed with in the past. And then from there, working out strategies to kind of cope with that was a huge thing. So I would say, yeah, number one, mental health. And then as a second, the importance of travel and how much I thrive in new environments. So that's a more personal one. But I think as a broad statement, everyone should be prioritizing their mental health. And I know that it's difficult. And it's one of those things where, unfortunately, the systems in place right now are not as accessible as they should be, even in Australia, but even worse, I know, in other countries that don't have universal healthcare. So it's just one of those things that if there are ways where you can access a public system, then I think it's something that's worth doing, or even just doing your own work on yourself. So whatever it is that you can do for yourself, I think there's definitely a place for professional help, but I think taking a holistic approach, so seeing what you can do in your everyday life, whether that's, and these might sound cheesy to people, but meditation, journaling, stuff like that is all so good for your mental health. Exercising where you can, like those sorts of things are very important for your mental health as well. So yeah, that would be my learning in a very long way of saying it.
In a very long way of saying it. No, I didn't. I didn't want to interrupt you, but you could, if you could see me right now, I will turn my camera on, you guys, so everyone can see me, and that's not it. Here we go. Start video. There we go. Um,
Hi.
Hi, and you. Tyla's catching me in the baseball cap. And so I agree that the mental health is number one, is absolutely number one. And I agree that it's so difficult when you're stuck in the snow for 6 months out of the year. That's why I moved to Arizona because um, I needed the sunshine, I needed the heat, I needed the people. I mean, I crave people. So, and I'm a huge believer in mental health resources. If you guys just Google mental health and go find someone and go talk to them, I'm still seeing a therapist. It will be 2 years that I've been going to therapy once a week. And I'm not talking physical therapy, I'm talking therapy as in mental health. And as soon as I finish up my transfer down here, I'm going to see someone down here who's um, registered to see people down in Arizona because I believe that mental health is huge and it's helped. And also a change of environment has helped me. But just going for a walk or just going for a stroll in your power wheelchair is helpful. And getting out and getting away from technology and getting away from working and just I have a friend that um, goes to get coffees and just doing something away from technology, away from using brain power, away from the world, and talk about social distancing. You can come up with the most creative ways to social distance that you can ever think of.
Absolutely. And you're right. I mean, at the start of our first lockdown, and I know it's been very different elsewhere, but I was in a great routine of going for a walk every morning and getting a coffee. Living in Melbourne, coffees are vital for our existence and our survival. So we had to go and walk and get our coffee every day. And it was in the second lockdown. So we had like a break in between when things kind of calmed down. And then we went into a second lockdown. And in the second lockdown was when my mental health just went absolutely out the window. And that was when I couldn't do the things like, well, I could do them, but I like felt mentally that I couldn't do them, like go for a walk and stuff like that. And I think that and it's hard to say now being like, I should have forced myself to do it because I just know that I wasn't in the space to do that. But you're absolutely right. Like just getting outside, fresh air, vitamin D from the sun, something like that. If you have sun in wherever you live, but it's just one of those things that it's really, really important.
No, I was on in fact, I'm still on a vitamin D pill, but I think I'm slowly but surely getting off of it because now I have natural vitamin D every single day. And if you look at me, if you see how I was before, I was pasty white before, and so yeah. So now if you look at me, I have a tan, but I'm like, yeah, the sun really helps in the heat and getting away from the snow and cold and ickiness. Really, really helps. So I believe that mental health is something really, really important. And now I know you have a bunch of questions to me, and so I turn it over to you.
So my first question is something that I ask. I'm not sure if it's the one I sent you, but I ask a couple of questions consistently on my podcast. And the first one that I always ask when a guest comes on is, what is something that you're grateful for today? So I would love to know what you're grateful for today, Win.
My What I'm grateful for today, as we record this on April 20th, I am grateful that I was able to move states successfully and successfully live on my own. Well, I'm 90% living on my own because, as you guys know, I still have cerebral palsy and need help, but I'm 90% living on my own. And I hope to be 100% in the next couple of weeks living on my own. And even though people are helping me through this transition, they are sneaking away and not and letting me live on my own and helping me behind the scenes more than they're helping me in person. And I hope that it's going to be like that, that I'll continue to be living on my own because I love it. And so I'm grateful to be living on my own.
Oh, that's awesome. And it's very, I mean, it's exciting to see that the people in your life are also recognizing that you want that space as well and giving you that. I think that's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, no. The people in my life, because some of my life tried to send me to a group home, and unbeknownst to me, they said in front of my two very important people in my life who've now become friends, we can't physically take care of Win because of all disabilities. And I'm thinking, oh, great, here we go. That's why they almost sent me to a group home. And I'm like, great. Now you tell me why. Now you tell me why in front of two very important people in my life. And it's like, great. This is not good. And they were so fixated on this group home in Kentucky that was not a good fit for me at all. And then when I went kicking and screaming and found my own home in a gated community built for people with disabilities in Phoenix, Arizona, and now granted, it's the first of its kind in the country, in the US. And so I'm a trailblazer, so to speak, down here. But now they're pissed off at me that they didn't get their way. And I'm like, well, you decided not to help. I said, help me. You decided to emotionally and physically abuse me when all I said was help my stepmom, help my aides, help me in turn, help the people helping me figure me out, and then you decide to emotionally and physically abuse me and try and stick me in a home and say the reason why we did that is because we can't physically take care of you due to we have disabilities of our own. And I'm like, no, thank you. No, thank you. I'll just make my own life.
I'm so sorry that you went through that, but it just shows again your ability to just overcome pretty much anything. Like, I think your story is incredible,
Yeah.
and I think what you're doing is awesome. So,
Oh,
yeah.
thank you. Thank you.
I did have another question that I wanted to ask,
Yeah,
and
go
this was
ahead.
kind of in the sustainability space. So, an interesting conversation that's been happening lately is about the ban of single use plastics. And some of the common things is around straws. Now, this I know is not an exclusive product. I know there are a number of other single use products that a lot of disabled people rely on because of their disability. And obviously, you can only talk from your own experience. Every disabled person is going to have a different experience, different needs, all of that sort of thing. So I'm completely aware of that in your answer. But essentially, what's happened is a lot of governments or like local governments in Australia have said, we're going to ban single use plastics. And then there's been some kickback from the disabled community who are saying, well, a lot of those products we rely on because those are what work for us. So I would just love to hear one, if you have any sort of thoughts on what a solution might be. And again, if you, it doesn't have to be a this will work now for everyone because it obviously won't. But two, also making sure or how we can make sure we are better including the disabled community as a whole in these types of discussions.
Okay. I will do you guys one better because my girlfriend got a reusable straw. My girlfriend has CP. I will have her stick in the show notes of Tyla's episode where she got her reusable straw because this is a huge thing and she had to go find one because of certain restaurants not giving her a straw and she has a hard time holding a glass and holding it and sipping out of it. And so I am a little bit more independent than she is when it comes to that. But I had a situation where I was handed a cooler, and the person nicely, kindly handed me a plastic fork and a plastic spoon with a case on them. So just in case I need my own um, spoon and fork, I have them, and so they're not single use. The spoon and fork are not single use; they're triple use to me, and so I feel like whatever you guys can find as your device of choice, whether it's a reusable straw or whether it's a reusable plastic knife and fork with a grippy so you can grab onto it, or whether it's a reusable water bottle like I have on me, do it, because I feel like if we give the disabled paper cups, they're not going to be successful with those. And so I'll ask her when she puts the episode up to put her straw link into it so you can see what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. That would be awesome if you could share that. How is it? I just want to follow up on that and just ask how, I mean, me as an individual, but anyone in the sustainability space can just make sure that we're making the conversation more inclusive, though. Because what happened was these bans were announced and people just, I think, and then a lot of people had come out and said, well, I don't think that you guys have been inclusive in this discussion. So, how are we able to make sure, is it a matter of talking to lots of different people? Because as I said, everyone has their own needs, but or is it a matter of having, yeah, I would just love to hear what your opinion on that as a whole is about making sure that we're being inclusive in those conversations.
It's a matter of asking the individual. Don't ask the aid. It's a matter of asking the individual what their choices are. And if worst comes to worst, if they're mute, then you can talk to the aide. But it's a matter of asking the individual, what would you like to see? Do you feel like it's easier for you to use a water bottle? Or do you feel like it's easier for you to use a plastic cup? And then we can look into a plastic cup. There are so many assistive devices out there as far as reusable stuff that it's not funny. And then I hate to sound ridiculous, but right now I am my assistant. Put put her name, put her initials on all her food. So she has choices. You guys may have to put the participant's name on the reusable straw, on the reusable knife and fork, on the reusable and cup and Velcro it somewhere to their system device so everyone knows that it's theirs. And you may have to say to restaurant owners, look, this is my assistive device. This is not your glass. Don't take it. This is my straw. Don't take it. I pull it out, I use it, I put it back in its bag.
Absolutely. And I think it is. It's an education point, and it's just something I wanted to, I thought that this was a great
No,
opportunity to
that is
engage you in that conversation.
That is a great question, and I know here in America it went all over too. And so reusable straws are a big thing, and that's why I don't do fast food, and if I do a Starbucks, I I should get I have a reusable water bottle, but I need to get a reusable coffee mug too because um, thank you for reminding me. I need to get a reusable coffee mug. And if anyone wants to send me a reusable coffee mug, please DM me or DM Danielle because that's a good point. Because these coffee shops are now using non-reusable coffee mugs. And so if we want to do less carbon footprint, we need to start reusing the coffee mugs and we need to start thinking about the less carbon footprint. Not only do the reusable straws for the disabled, but the reusable coffee mugs for people in general, because people in my life like to go out and get coffee. Well,
Mm.
that's wonderful, but for the amount of coffee cups I've seen coming into my house lately, it's like plastic, plastic, plastic. Yes, and I love that the businesses doing it, but I'm like, can we please knock it off with a plastic coffee cup? Could we please just use a reusable coffee cup and a reusable water bottle and then make Win very happy?
And it comes back to the small changes, right? So for some people, it might be that the water bottle's the first step and then they get a coffee cup a little bit later. I mean, I have a whole, as I've mentioned before, I have a whole online course about how people can live more low waste. Like there's so many things you can change, but again, just doing the small changes, even choosing to buy like shop less is such an easy thing that anyone can do before if like even before if you don't yet want to buy a coffee cup or a water bottle or anything like that, if you don't want to make that investment yet, then just buying less clothes, stuff like that is such an easy thing that you can do. So I'm glad that you touched on all of that, but it's such a huge thing. Like our world is so full of plastic, and I just hope that there is more change soon, but I really appreciate your insight on that as well.
Yeah, the reusable coffee cups. Oh my God, people to start reusing coffee cups, reusing the straws, doing um, doing reusable forks and knives, because now with COVID, the servers don't want to touch the forks and the knives. Now it's
Mm.
all QR codes to pull up the menu because of um, contactless pay. And I know in Starbucks it's contactless pay. Well, why don't you walk into Starbucks? Here's a challenge for you guys. Walk into Starbucks, buy one of those tumblers once, once, the Starbucks tumbler, that you know what I'm talking about, and just use it instead of killing Mother Earth with your coffee cups. Yes, listen, you know I'm talking to you. And so, um, and so buy the Starbucks tumbler and just use it once. And then be happy as grandma. Buy a hydro-flask coffee mug, or win a reusable coffee mug and just have me use it and just say, here, just do something. I mean, you're killing Mother Earth by using the plastics. Oh, don't get me started. Don't get me and so you're killing Mother Earth by using plastic. And I know people need coffee. People can function on coffee, but they can also function on Thai tea in a reusable glass. Thank you very this whole Starbucks thing and going to get coffee and going this way, and that doesn't help. And so just be mindful of the planet, especially after COVID. And then you don't necessarily have to do if you have the reusable coffee cup, and if you have the when you go to Starbucks and you can hand them the reusable coffee cup, then you don't have to do social distancing while waiting for your coffee. So it's catch 22. You can just hand them, and they of course have gloves and masks on. You can just hand them the reusable coffee cup. Say, here, I want to help you guys out, because God knows they don't want to touch one more coffee cup.
Mm. Yeah, it's all about the changes, but I think that that's a great recommendation.
But at the same time, it's all about the small little changes.
Absolutely.
And Tyler, where can people find you? Where can people get a hold of you if they choose to do so?
The best place is probably just going to my website, which is just tylalockwood.com. So that's Tyla Lockwood. That's the best way that I like to explain it. And on there, you can get access to pretty much all of my stuff. It's the same name on Instagram. So it's just Tyla Lockwood and pretty much every social media. But if you go on my website, you can find the podcast, which is the Unlock Earth podcast, my low waste living course, YouTube, all of that sort of stuff is all accessible through there. So that might be the best place.
How cool. And I will put the reusable straws thing in Tyler's episode because we mentioned it. And I will also do a little bit of research on reusable coffee cups too for the disabled, and have you guys can adapt them to fit you guys. But I think that's a great. It's just about the small changes, and I hope you guys enjoyed another fabulous episode. And I hope to catch you guys next time. Thanks, you guys. Bye, you guys.